My name is Valerie Van Kooten. I'm the administrator at the State of Iowa Historical Society, and this is the Prairie Farm Podcast.
I'm Mark Kenyon.
I'm Dr. Julie Meechan.
I'm Steve Hansen.
I'm Jill Bebout.
Chad Gravy.
My name is Jeremy French.
Laura Walter.
Carol Hawksbergen, owner of Hoxie Native Seeds, and this is the Prairie Farm Podcast.
This is Hal Herring, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast.
Skip Sly, Iowa Whitetail.
Valerie Van Kooten, State Historical Society of Iowa.
Dr. Matt Helmer at Iowa State University.
My name is Kyle Laubarger with the Native Habitat Project.
I'm Judd McCullum. I appeared out of the wilderness, and this is the Prairie Farm Podcast.
Welcome to the Prairie Farm Podcast.
If you're thinking about cover crop for your land or your landlord's land or something that you might be managing, you've got to check out Iowa Cover Crop. We have worked with them many a times personally, and even though they're a small company, they are as efficient as any of the big companies that we've worked with. They do a fantastic job and also super educated. Those poor guys, we have pestered them with more ignorant questions than maybe any other company we've ever worked with on anything, and they answer really well and very promptly. We really appreciate them. If you're looking for cover crop, check out iowacovercrop.com. You're not going to regret it, and let them know that the Prairie Farm Podcast sent you their way.
Well, happy April, everyone. We thought, being that it is April Fools, and you have your normal two favorite fools here on the podcast, we should celebrate the day with. I just like to call you our state historian. Is that an accurate? Is that an accurate enough title?
That's fine. I'll take it. Yes.
So how about this? Our favorite state historian.
Oh, great.
Miss Val Van Kooten, who, if you have been listening to the podcast for a long time, her family has a lot of history with our founder, Carol.
Mm-hmm.
In fact,
And our podcast.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. This is, I believe, her third time on the podcast.
Yeah, your dad and mom were on.
Yeah,
right. That was a great episode.
Yeah,
and your first podcast put us on the map locally.
Wow,
it was Kent's idea. But yep, we had people that.
I think it was your idea to do a history of tulip time. Yeah, I think it was a genius idea too.
Well, random people that had no idea who we were, all of a sudden knew who we were because of how good your interview was.
Well, I'm still waiting for the check on that one.
Yeah.
Us too, Val. Us too.
Yeah, I don't know if you've told the story before on the podcast, but you have a memory of Carol working out with your dad, and he would ride his motorcycle out to work all the time.
Yeah, he was our hired man. He was in high school, and he'd come after school or he'd get out early for work release, and he had a motorcycle, and he would come out, and my sister and I were probably 10, 11 years old, and a lot of times, sometimes the job was, my mom would say, Carol, can you run the kids into town for this or that? And so we got to ride the motorcycle into town, and that was so cool to do that when you're a 10-year-old girl.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I remember the motorcycle very well. It was red. Yeah, I think it was red, if I remember.
Yeah.
I
think it was a red Honda, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I drove that motorcycle for a while. And
really?
The story is, there were not real child labor laws on the farm. Forget about that. So Dad worked literally driving tractor from like 6 years old onwards, maybe a little younger than that, on smaller tractors, and worked for free. 16th birthday, it might have been 15th birthday. Dad his grandpa Harold wakes him up, says, I got a surprise for you. Brings him out to the garage, and there's a dirt bike, there's a motorcycle there.
Wow.
And it was his travel. Well, here's a secret. Now he could get to the farm and back without Grandpa Harold having to drive him out there.
Okay.
But also, it was like his pride and joy. I mean, he earned that with 10 long years worth of work. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it always feels like we're coming back to kind of almost like family here when we got Val on.
Yeah. But and I'm so sorry, Ken, can you just snuggle a little closer to me? The camera. I don't know the camera.
I think you're just trying to torture me in
my
some
lack
way
of
right
deodorant
now.
hurting you.
But no, since it is April Fools and you are our favorite state historian, I thought it'd be kind of fun for you to, on the spot. I wouldn't normally ask people this, but I know you're so creative and knowledgeable, to come up with two stories for us. One being a factual story and one being fictional, and then the two April Fools over here have to figure out which one is bogus, not real.
Okay. Let's see if I can stump you like, on the public radio show.
Yeah.
Wait, don't tell me. They have a story that's... Okay, the first story is about a UFO scare in northwest Iowa in Plymouth County. You probably have heard of the War of the Worlds in the 1930s, where people got something like that happened in Plymouth County. A bunch of high school kids called up a local radio station, and that was in October of 38, I believe it was. And they said, we were outside. We're sure that they were flying saucers. We could see people in them looking out the windows, and they look like little green men. And the livestock in this area is just going nuts. It's flying around, and it looked like it landed somewhere. And they gave a name of a farmer's farm, and we're going to call the police, and and this radio station broadcast this out. And pretty soon, it just sort of took on a life of its own. Other people were calling and saying, hey, I think I saw something, or we think something has landed in our field, or our cows are acting really strange, chickens are acting really strange. And this went on for probably the better part of 5 or 6 hours before finally the police found these kids who had started this and said, now what's going on? And they admitted that it had been a prank. But even when they went on the air and announced that, these people weren't 100% sure. They still thought something was going on. And so there was this big scare about UFOs up in northwest Iowa.
Crazy.
Wow. This has the potential to be a false story about a false story. That's playing
wild.
Some mind games there, Val.
Also, I've got to say, I had a teacher in Pella, and when they introduced themselves to our class, they said, this is my name, this is where I grew up, trying to be relatable. And I believed them that they believe this. And they said, I believe UFOs are real because when I was a teenager, me and a group of friends saw this. I don't want to say where this teacher grew up, or I don't want people to trace it back, figure out who it was, but they were
Woodstock,
dead
New York.
serious. And they weren't like a conspiratorial kind of person. They were convinced. They said, we saw a thing that looked about the size of a barrel, an oil drum barrel, rotating awkwardly through the sky, and then it took off. They swore by it.
Wow.
Is that wild?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm surprised they would admit that to their students.
I know. I don't know if they were just trying to mess with them.
I know people who say they have seen something, and they're very sober people. I mean, they're not practical people. They're not people you would...
Crazy.
Who knows? I'm not going to say yes or no. I mean...
welcome to the Prairie Farm Podcast.
That's right.
Where we talk about aliens.
My friend Caleb and I, we like to go mule deer hunting out in western Nebraska. And I mean, from just like a human population density, there's like nobody out there. And the guy, we stayed at this one guy's ranch. He had a camper parked out in his yard, and he let us rent a spot in there every night. And his ringtone on his phone was like that.
Oh,
Like every time his phone would ring, it was like, and it just made you
Twilight
wonder.
Zone.
Yeah, like this guy has spent so much time on the open prairies all by himself. I wonder if he's like
seen some stuff.
Yeah, if he's been abducted a few times.
Oh man.
Okay, story 2.
okay. Well, this happened in East Central Iowa in the 1880s. Iowa County, the town of Belle Plaine. They were putting in a new well on the south side of town, and the water level, they had tapped into an aquifer. The water levels level tables weren't quite the same. And when they opened up this south well, it was almost like bursting a bubble or bursting a balloon, because the water gushed up. And for 14 months, they could not control this geyser of water. And it was spewing petrified wood and rocks. And they tried, all these people coming in to cap it and stop it. And they would think that they had it capped for a while, and it would blow again. And finally, after the whole downtown area, they made a trench to send it to the Marengo River. But it was just a mess. And finally, after 14 months, they did get it capped with a huge contusion of stuff that came in, like a flu that went down and capped it. But they said even today, if they're digging around out there, it's difficult to stop this water flow because it's that high.
I am deeply concerned about how convinced I am on both of these now. I don't trust anything you're about to tell us now.
Okay.
Oh, man.
One is true, one is not.
I think I'm picking the alien one is not true. No, I don't know. The Belle Plaine. We're so close to Belle Plaine. I feel like we should know.
The problem is the Belle Plaine one seems more believable, but that's what, like, if you try to trick
seems
us,
believable in 1880, you know.
I'm gonna say
I'm going with aliens. It's basically 50-50 to me.
I think it's more likely that teens would prank like that than to have the geyser in Belle Plaine. I'm gonna say
okay.
B. I'm gonna say
so
B
your
is,
guys are split.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna find out who the real April Fool is.
The aliens are totally false. Belle Plaine really, they called it Jumbo, and it was, I did a Weird and Wonderful Iowa on it.
It's a real thing.
If you get on YouTube, it's really interesting. I did the whole, they have pictures, we have pictures and everything. Get on YouTube, Weird and Wonderful Iowa, and look for Jumbo, Belle Plaine. They still have a plaque there on their main street on a rock that shows where it was. Yeah.
So what did they figure out the water issue?
I can't remember exactly how it went. They capped it, but I don't think they ever got things.
So it's just wet over there? It's just real wet?
Well, I don't. This guy who went in the 90s and was from the DNR and was taking samples, he said, his quote was, "We were 5 minutes away from being on Good Morning America," because it still was they were still having problems getting things. This was in like 93 or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah. So there's a lot of those. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'm trying to think of some kind of, that's such a weird thing to have, a feature to have. There's got to be a way to like channel that to make it useful for something. You know what I mean?
Make some money for your town, yeah.
Yeah, like put a car wash around it or something.
Well, that's what they did. One of the guys who came in was really trying to make money off it. And he donned a deep sea diver suit and was charging people $0.25 to watch him go down and everything. And the city's like, that's not what we've got here. We want you to try and stop this. But several people tried and failed, and the city wouldn't pay them, and then they were angry, and it was quite the thing.
Oh, the city.
That is so interesting. You totally got me on that one. I am the April Fool.
I thought they were 50-50. I literally just spitballed. I had no idea. I had no idea.
That was good.
Now, if somebody from Plymouth County calls and says, "Yeah, that really did happen," then we'll.
Well, one of the things I thought you might be going with that is I'm pretty sure there's a pretty sizable meteor impact, right? Meteorite impact.
Yes, in northern Iowa. Yes, and I can't remember the name of the town, but they've got, they have a place where a meteor landed, and it's still kind of cratered. Still see it.
Really?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
It was like prehistoric, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like while the town was there.
No, I don't remember.
To have an impact of that size, you're talking
was big.
Devastation.
Interesting.
A large area.
Yeah.
What causes? I just think of the physics. It like smashes the ground, and then there's wind and dust that goes all over the place. But
it's just displacement. You have that much matter. Hit the surface of the earth, and now it just pulverizes everything and shoots it everywhere else. And some stuff burns up too, because it's
the energy that's created creates so much heat.
In fact, the rock that's created by the heat of a meteorite, like the surrounding rock fragments, are called, I believe, tektites. I think.
Tektites. Are they very?
I used to have a little box of tektites. I left them at the classroom at the first school I taught at.
Wow,
so if anyone comes across those.
Well, Val, we really appreciate you joining. We had a real reason, and having you out, we've had some historians on, and Ken and I wanted to help paint a picture of what the first, maybe the last decade and of the 1800s and the first few decades of the 1900s were like for people. And there's a lot of
Iowans, right?
Yes, yeah, for Midwest, specifically for Iowans, and there's a lot of romance that goes on of like, well, if we could just go back to how simple it was and all these things. And
I think that's a good spot to start. What of the thing, like when we romance about that, from what you know about it, and truthfully, from somebody who got a little taste. I mean, when you were a kid, farming was already changed quite a bit, and it was about to change a whole lot more by the time you were graduating from high school. But you got a little taste of the small farm life where and actually, once again, you go back, listen to the episode where we interview Val's parents.
Yeah, but she was still post-tractor.
Right. But I mean, but there's still like things like gathering eggs and having to chore all the livestock out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Out in the pasture, out in the pens, and cleaning out the hen house and things like that. When we romanticize, like Nick was talking about, with that old way of living, let's go to the pre-tractor era probably. What ones do you think would, if we could still make that a part of the average rural Iowa upbringing for a kid, that would probably be good for us? Are there any of those realities?
Yeah, I think so. I think when people romanticize things, it isn't so much things as it is values and feelings. They romanticize the fact that the family sat down for dinner at night. The kids were all home. The kids worked hard on the farm. My sister and brother and I, we worked pretty hard on the farm. My kids didn't get that same experience. Every kid should have to unload hay into the elevator. I mean, that's just hay bales. I mean, that just builds character. Yeah. Everybody should have to walk beans or, detassel corn. So I think some of those things are, I think could still be instilled, and a lot of people still do a good job of those things. But what I have found is that, I mean, if you read even the scientific matter, there's a term for this. It's called declinism, where people have this nostalgic look at things traditionally about 50 years before where they're living, and they think that was a better time. It was the 1950s. Now it's the 70s and 80s. That was a better time. Mm-hmm. In 1940, the Gallup poll did a poll among farm people across the Midwest, and 80% said things were better in the horse and buggy days. Now, these are people who probably have tractors, starting to get tractors, have cars, but there's still that nostalgia. I think it's more for feelings and for, because it always wasn't so great. I mean, they don't remember that as well.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that's like, they're thinking like pre-penicillin.
Exactly.
Do you think that's just a human thing where we're really good at blocking out pain? For instance, mothers don't dread labor near as much as it actually is painful because I think they physically kind of forget it. There's like a chemical that they. Do you think we're just good at that as humans, or what do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it is a human trait because it goes back. I memean, in the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes, there's a verse that says, "Don't say, why are these times so much worse than they used to be?" There's the verse in Ecclesiastes 7. They're saying, don't say that. I mean, so people have always had this trait that it's something you want to hold on to. I mean, I have a nostalgia for my childhood because it was my personal childhood, but I look at what was happening in the world and in the farm economy. I mean, as I came into high school and college, it was the beginning of the farm crisis. Mm-hmm. It was horrible, talking to my parents, it was a rotten time. But for me, it was a great time. I was a kid in high school, and
maybe that's what we miss more than anything is just
the innocence of not having to worry about those things. Yeah, maybe that's it.
So I'm really curious about this. Did your parents or grandparents' generation complain about how lazy kids were?
No, they really They really didn't, because we really weren't. I mean, my mother, I still chide her about this, is that she, we wanted to make money for tulip time. That was the big thing every year. You're going to go tulip time, you want to buy stuff. So she would make us clean the basement for 50 cents, and we thought that was great. It's like, talk about child labor, so I mean, we worked very hard because we wanted to make money. And I don't see that trait in kids anymore, because I think they're in so many activities that they can't work.
Yeah, I can't get my kids to quit blowing all their money on the stupid gumball machines. Every time, I mean, I tell them, like, look, you got to hold on to your money. And every time we go, they know if we're going to a place, oh yeah, that place has gumball machines.
Okay, yes. I'm going to tell you a quick trick. 2 things. The prefrontal cortex is not done yet, but also, how much money has been spent on psychology of getting humans to buy things? Your only defense against that is your prefrontal cortex if they don't have one.
Fair enough. Well, I think there's something to that with kind of what you're talking about, Nicholas, where you want to avoid the dealing with the pain. Like when I feel like a lazy lump, maybe I'm sitting there scrolling on my phone or something.
Lump.
And I'm just thinking to myself, man, if this was like 1952, I'd have all kinds of stuff to keep me busy, and I wouldn't have to be sitting here finding, something that was worthwhile doing. Yeah, sure, I could get up and go and, patch that hole in the wall or fix this squeaky door hinge or something like that. But I hate doing stuff like that. I like working outside but I don't have a reason to, and what it is I'm creating an excuse for myself. And I catch myself doing that constantly. Like, man, you're just kind of making an excuse for being a lazy lump right now. And you're saying that it's out of my power. It's not 1952 anymore. Farming's changed. I can't do farm work. And in reality, it's just an excuse for what I'm doing.
Yeah, but sometimes I think it's okay to be the lazy lump.
Yeah, right. And that's part of it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
you need to
relax a little bit,
just some downtime and but yeah, you're right. There was always something to do, because you would have had a huge garden. You would have had, procuring all your own food, basically. There was a lot to do.
Yeah. I don't know anyone personally that has read more Pioneer or earlier Iowa resident journals than you have. I'm curious, how much downtime? 1850 to 1930. How much downtime was
question.
there?
I think there was downtime, because there were a lot of, as neighborhoods grew, there were a lot of neighborhood type gatherings. Women would have quilting bees, and then men would have things helping somebody raise a cabin or raise a barn. So even the downtime was work. They were still, or having a shucking bee.
Is that when things like Lions clubs and Elks clubs?
Yeah, those kind of came later.
Okay.
But you start seeing country groups like the Grange, or 4-H starts in some of those earlier days after the turn of the century, because people had get-togethers. They did things. 4th of July, they usually had big get-togethers, but even their work was fun. I mean, they'd go. A lot of times, groups of neighbors would go mapling together in March when the sap started running, and they'd be tapping them for maple syrup. And that was a huge social gathering. You'd meet neighbors there. You'd camp there for a few weeks, get your maple syrup, get it boiled down for the year. You met. And
that's probably what they used for sugar all year.
Yeah, people met partners there.
Wow.
I mean, it was a place to meet others. And so They had downtime, but a lot of times that still included some sort of work.
It's crazy how romantic that feels. You just talking about it, how much. But what you're not talking about is the ticks and the
Exactly.
all the little nuisances that we don't really think of, and you're kind of starting to dabble in it. But I would really want to know, day in a life. Let's start with a young man in his 20s. What are they doing pre-tractor time?
Wow, start right on your own dynamic.
Yes, I would like to know how I fall short in today's society.
Well, if you were still living at home, or or you're married, I guess doesn't really make a difference. But if you're still living at home, you'd be up early, probably milking cows, unless you had sisters, because a lot of times the women took care of the cow milking duties.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
You'd get up early, you'd get your animals fed, you'd get your horses ready to go for the day. You'd come in, eat breakfast after an hour or two of choring, and then you'd go out and do a few things around the farm. And then sometimes they'd eat second breakfast, which was sort of like a heavy coffee time. And then you'd take off for the day and go out into your field or fixing your fence or whatever you're doing. Sometimes you'd come back for dinner, but sometimes they'd bring it to you. Sometimes you'd pack it and take it. But you'd probably be out there until sun started going down. And then you'd come back in, wash up, finish your chores around the yard, and come in. And at night, families often sat around and read to each other. Women always did some sort of handwork, or they were always working on mending or sewing. Sometimes if somebody had an instrument, you'd take an instrument down and play. Sometimes a neighbor would come over and tell stories. The kids might play marbles or do homework on the floor if they are going to school. But it was all things that could be done by a kerosene lamp or candlelight.
Man, we got some heavy declinism going on right now. Sounds pretty nice.
Dude, can you imagine families once a week sitting around someone who's playing an instrument for 30 straight minutes?
Spend one day a month like that.
Oh, but I'm just imagining 30 minutes of a whole family gathered around an instrument of the most mediocre instrument playing you've probably ever heard in your life compared to today. And that is really... It is,
but I think my husband and I worked at Living History Farms as volunteers before we had kids.
Can you get us an interview there? We cannot get an interview there.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can get you an interview there.
We really want to.
Yeah. And we worked.
Subject.
We worked. Okay, we worked in the 1900 house, and it was 110 degrees. I was canning tomato juice. Those long skirts. My husband was out cutting wood. And it was so miserable and so hot. And when we went home that night, we're like, oh, thank God for air conditioning and elastic waists. And, my dad has said the same thing. He used to think, oh, I'd love to be Amish, and such a simple life. And then, he came home one day after doing some stuff with some Amish. He was buying some equipment. He said it was hot in there. And, I want to come home in front of my air conditioner. And so I think, we kind of... Yeah, we do kind of.
Yeah. What were the kids helped probably with milking? Were they mostly like feed the chickens, gather eggs, clean out the...
Yeah, I mean, as they got older, a lot of times you'd go out and have to get the cows in at night out of the field, bring them in. You'd always help in the garden. Nobody liked pulling weeds, but doing garden stuff. Doing chickens, turkeys, whatever, in addition to feeding them, then they had to, kill them and clean them, a couple times a year for their meat. Kids would, they were kind of the gophers in a lot of ways, but a lot of times they had stuff that they were in charge of doing, every day, feeding the sheep or doing this or cleaning out the pig pen or whatever it was. And so kids learned very early. I don't think kids back then said, like I've heard kids say today, well, what are you going to pay me if I do that?
Yeah.
It was, you're part of this family. And if you want to survive, you're going to have to pull your weight in this family.
Yeah. How much time was allotted for them to be just unstructured play time?
Oh, I think in most families there was quite a bit. I mean, you read, kids were playing, by ponds. They had made little boats and things. They were ice skating when things froze over. They were playing in creeks and in pastures. they had favorite rocks that they would go to and dig around. And I think kids were very attuned very early to nature and its rhythms.
Oh yeah, that is interesting. It's crazy how intuitive little kids are with phones. And I bet little kids are also really intuitive with nature as well if they're kind of out there. And,
I think so. I mean, they understood the rhythms of the seasons and the moons and all that kind of stuff way better than we do today.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
That is. When you're reading these journals, I've heard, maybe I read it on the internet, but I heard to some degree that they didn't really talk about their feelings at all. Did they ever, or was it just we did this, then we did this, then we did this?
Pretty much. It was pretty much a litany of the stuff they did that day. They never talk about having a fight with somebody or having a disagreement with someone, or it's more, this is what the weather was like. This is what we had to eat today. This is what John was doing. This is what Mary was doing. We talked about selling our hogs next week, next week, or butchering next week, that kind of thing. And they are very, very straightforward. Not all. I'm sure there were ones that were much more emotional, but a lot of them weren't.
Along those lines, I think I talked about this on the podcast, maybe not. I came across something truly amazing at Christmas at my grandparents' house. This last Christmas. My grandpa's father, who I never met, he died in the early 1960s. And I mean, he was pretty young. I think he was still in his 50s when he died.
Can't miss him by a year.
Oh, nice. Yeah, thank you. He, though, kept a daily journal for years. Mm-hmm. And when he died, he had 4 kids. And those journals were split up among the 4 kids to include the year they were born and then like a few years after. And so my grandfather's allotment, he was born in 1937. I got out the 1937 one. I always enjoy going back and reading about the day my grandpa was born. So in leading up to that, and he was born on January 17th. So I was reading the days leading up. I wonder if he was, documented any like nervousness or anxiousness about the arrival of a child. And I think it was the day before he was born. He wrote down that he had spent the day with Carol's grandfather. So the guy that I don't come from that area. My mom was born in Pella, and then I grew up in the Quad City area. And so Carol and I we're not related. We had no prior connection before I started working for him. And here and documented in this daily journal, he happens to write down that he had spent the day stacking hay he didn't call it stacking, he called it baling in January. And I was like, what does that mean? And I asked my grandpa, and he's like, yeah, that was an old method they would do in the winter time. They would get straw and they'd put it into shocks, kind of like off of the threshing machine. And but they would do it in barns. It was winter work that they could do. And he had been doing that with Carol's grandfather. Now here I am, almost 100 years later, and Carol and I did all this farm work together for several years. And just to close that loop, but it was very much so every day started out in that journal with the weather.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that, my dad hates that. It's not his, it's his relation by marriage. But he's like, I wish you wouldn't have done that. I mean, we can look up what the weather was on that day. And it's like, well, Dad, they didn't know they'd have the internet.
Right.
But also I keep it not a daily journal, but a couple times a week. And so often I start out by writing what the weather is. And I think it was just a mental warm up.
Sure.
And when you farm, it dictates what your day is going to be.
Exactly.
The weather did. And so
there was nothing in there about anxiousness about having
nothing. Zero. Like you said, there was nothing. Well, when he was born, he said exciting day or something like that.
Yeah.
Norman arrived today. Exciting day.
Man, that's cool. What about religion? Does that come up in the journals much?
Yeah, it does. I mean, a lot of these people had a deep faith. Many times, especially the early pioneers, there was no organized church. If you were in a town or you were close to a town, you could go to a church. But a lot of times it was, like itinerant pastors who would go around, that kind of thing. If you wanted to get married or buried or have a baby baptized, you waited till that, they'd keep the person in the ice house or a dead person or in the snowbank until a pastor could get there to bury them. Wow. That was kind of the rhythm of it. But I think for a lot of people, faith was a very personal thing. I think it was also, I've seen this with farmers all my life, is that their faith is tied to the land and their stewardship of the land, and their feeling that they are taking care of it to pass it on. I've seen that with many farmers, and I think for women, their faith was much more practical. Their lives did not extend outside the house and the farmyard nearly as much as a man's did. And for women, it was more faith is a practical thing that gets me through the day, that kind of thing.
Like a discipline?
Yeah, like a discipline.
Interesting.
Was there?
Yeah.
Have you ever come across any, like right now, an era in, 50 years from now when a church historian looks back at this area, they'll probably call it the era of deconstructionism. You hear of all these people who are re-examining their faith for various reasons, right? I think politics are a big part of that, how politics and religion have become so lockstep. And people are really breaking it down and saying, what is it that I believe?
Yep. And
I imagine if there are people that are still journaling, that's going to show up, and they're going to, people are, when great grandkids are reading their daily journal, they're going to see those themes. Was there any of that you've come across in
you're saying like more intimate?
Yeah, just like, man,
level.
The pastor said this today. I don't know what I think about that, or I don't even know what I believe anymore, or
you see that
like questioning of their faith.
Yes, especially with the death of children.
Okay.
I've seen that in where especially a family that would lose maybe 2 or 3 children in a row to diphtheria or typhus. And you go out to cemeteries, you see that, of 5 little graves, right in a row. And sometimes, the mothers will say things like, I don't even know, well, they say it more eloquently, but I don't even know if I can still believe in a higher power. So I'm just going to coast on faith here for a while until I can basically get my bearings again. But tragedy kind of was the time that people, really in a tragedy, there is no way to make sense of it. Sometimes faith is the only thing you can hang on to. And, but you do see that with the death of children, especially, or the death of a spouse, where people would question, how can a good God do this? Same questions we ask today.
Yeah.
What? That's really interesting, because I've always seen it as so matter of fact. May the Almighty be with me today. God bless me with this. So it's interesting to know that there was that deeper.
Oh yeah, there was.
And maybe they were thinking nobody but them would ever read that.
That's true too. And I think for some people that was a diary. Was their emotional, maybe even if they didn't put a lot of emotion in it, but it was their outlet, where they could at least list things that they're thinking about. For me, when I'm nervous or anxious or I have too much to do, I want to make a list, and then I know what my parameters are. And I think sometimes diaries acted like that.
Sure.
sort of a parameter.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because, I mean, if they're writing down things like the weather and what it was like that year and day by day so that they could go back and check through cycles of what's been going on, I imagine like it was their Bible and their journal right next to each other in their house. Was there no semblance of like you hand down the family Bible,
right?
But was there any semblance of like handing down a journal?
I don't know. We get a lot of them donated here, so they got handed down somewhere. Most houses had, yes, the Bible, probably had Ben Franklin's almanac, the old farm, Poor Richard's almanac and the farmer's almanac. Probably had some kind of farm journal, farm newspaper, maybe had some sort of circular church newspaper. So usually they'd have a few things like that in the house to read. But journals would not have been kept in public. You'd hide it, keep it somewhere, maybe not hide it, but people knew it was private. You didn't go look through somebody else's.
After reading so many journal entries and somebody who wants to journal now, what do you think people should be including? Like that will just be a treasure to future people that read. What kind of details should they be including?
Yeah. Oh man. When I was doing a lot of antique clothing stuff, I would have loved more description on clothing,
Sure.
The style, why did they pick that fabric? How did they feel wearing it? That kind of thing.
Our grandkids will have a Rolodex of Instagram for that.
The Respect the Drip journals.
Yeah. I think just honesty. I think if people are honest in their journals, I think that's going to be something that's more of a treasure to your family than just recording facts, that's okay. My dad has recorded every piece of livestock he's ever sold and what he got paid for it. And he loves going back and looking at all that. I would like to have read something from my grandmother or great grandmother that talked about how hard being a mother was sometimes. And I have written some things on that if my kids ever read them, they'll think, oh my gosh, my mom was having a nervous breakdown. Well, there were days I think I was.
It's understandable.
But it's honest. And, I think then you feel like, they were people, real people.
You get a taste of their personality.
Right.
Shameless plug on the pod. My siblings and I interview people.
No, you're not a sponsor. You can't say
video memoirs.
Okay.
We do like video memoirs for people, right? And we sit down, we interview them, we add in photos and stuff. The biggest hurdle to that business for us is that for whatever reason, people 60 to young 70s seem, that's awesome. People over that age are not interested in doing it. And I've been on the phone with a lady just crying. She can't get her mom to do it. And her mom was old. I'm very old, almost 90, maybe 90 years old, and had a lot of wisdom, lived through a lot of things, and just wasn't interested sitting down and telling her story. You have any insight as to why that is?
Yeah, I think, is that local around here?
Across Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Iowans, especially people from Northern European backgrounds, grew up to be very stoic. And if I talk to you about something that's painful, I might show emotion. I might cry. I might. I don't want to show that I was vulnerable with that. I think that's what a lot of us people don't want to. I found that with people in my church who had lived in the Netherlands during World War II, and I wanted to interview them for stories for a church newspaper, and a lot of them just didn't want to talk about it. It just was too painful.
Yeah, and
they didn't want to do it. And some of them did kind of slowly break down, and I'd ask a few questions and they'd think about it. But some never did. And I hate that they went to their grave with these stories that nobody will ever know.
Yeah. And I wonder, I'm sure a vulnerability piece, it is scary and painful to be vulnerable. I'm sure that is something to do with it. I think there's also
I think it might be the part where you make them do yoga while they have to.
Well, they got to do yoga. Otherwise, they're not vulnerable enough if they're not doing yoga. Just like 90-year-olds doing
while they're doing downward dog, Nick's laying there holding the mic.
Yeah. So tell me how that made you feel. No, and that was fascinating to me. That the older, but that mid generation that really maybe is old enough to have an interview, but they got 20 years, 25, 30 years left of their life ahead of them. Like it's kind of too early to do it. But that was shocking to me. That really was. That everyone kind of Kent's age to 65, super excited, want to get their parents to do it, and then they don't want to do it.
My age to 65.
No, I mean, because your parent, it'd be like your parent could be 70 or 75 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your parents are not. They're young.
Yeah,
they're young, but
just like me.
Yeah, very. But a wee babe. I think that the journals of pioneers are fascinating, but I think I'm even romanticizing reading those journals because I bet a lot of those are real dull. You know, you're just reading page after page.
Well, I've consciously filtered when I've done a journal entry where it's like, this was a really painful day for the family or something. Ain't no way I'm talking about that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I don't want so-and-so to then think this thing about somebody in the family or something for all time going
You're not going to be putting family skeletons into your. Yeah,
I do think there used to be more of an understanding of like people make mistakes, but let's kind of look at their trajectory or what they're trying. Now it's kind of like, oh, you made a mistake 18 years ago. We don't talk to you anymore. Yeah. But with the journals, when you're reading them, what, like, a little bit of a pivot, what changes in technology seemed to change journal entries the most? You know, there's like maybe like tractors might be an example. There's a clear before and after this technology was introduced.
Well, I suppose quill pens to ink pens. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, some of the really old ones from the 1850s and 60s. I mean, I don't know if any of you have seen the one that just got published about the Rousseau. It was Wyatt Earp's family journey out to the West. The Rousseau party was who they went with. And the Rousseau family, the mother, kept a diary the whole way out to the West. And they just published that.
I did not read her diary, but I would love to. But yeah. I listened to there's an audiobook, a new audiobook on the Earp family.
Okay.
That just came out.
Okay.
Like, within the last year.
I wonder if it's the same person.
Referenced
yes.
That.
Okay. And
she did not think very highly of
no, and she was
Wyatt's father. What was his name again?
Nicholas.
That's right.
She was very honest, and she was an invalid. I mean, she went along and really couldn't walk. But Nicholas Earp was a tough character, and they had to several times admonish him for his language and for his rough behavior. And she's pretty honest about that. But I thought about that. Okay, she's sitting around writing this at night with what, a pot of ink and a quill pen?
Yeah,
it had to have been.
Yeah,
and then as you go on further after the turn of the century. You're writing with probably some sort of pen. I don't know exactly when ink pens came in.
That would have been like fountain pens where you refill
fountain pens,
them,
right? Fountain pens.
Interesting.
And then, and I don't know how many people keep journals now on a computer. Do you write yours or do you keep it on a computer?
I write it.
I write it.
Yeah, most people write theirs, I think.
And I've got like a stack of them, and I date on the front of each one. It says the date I first wrote in it and the date I last wrote in it. And I have a stack, and there's one I can't find. It's very upsetting to me from when I was a senior in college.
You can't find it on eBay. Just go to
it's always going to
Prairie Farmer 55. And I'm just selling all your journals.
It has me and my wife's dating journey in it. I can't find it. I wonder if she has it tucked away somewhere.
Yeah, maybe she doesn't want it out there.
It.
Yeah. but right now I'm reading Atkinson's, I can't think of it, Rick Atkinson's trilogy about the Revolutionary War. And it's very dense. Each book's about 600 pages.
Someone told me about that recently.
It's a great trilogy. You have to read it in small bits because it's a
called?
lot. It's Rick Atkinson. It's a trilogy. The first one's called The British Are Coming. Second one is The Fate of the Day, and the third one hasn't been released yet.
I think it might have been my pastor. He's a big Revolutionary War buff. I think because he was comparing him to David McCullough, who wrote Washington in 1776.
But I mean, this guy, I'll bet he has referenced the journals of at least 2,000 both British and American soldiers.
Wow.
Everybody kept a journal.
Yeah.
And they must have kept it because it's in a library somewhere that he found. And they're same thing, very deadpan. I mean, after a battle where everybody is slaughtered and it was a horrible defeat, somebody would write, we were quite disturbed and ruffled today, or something like that. I mean, instead of almost everybody's dead here, great masses of casualties, but it's just, they're not.
Supper was late.
Yeah. It's just they're very stoic and,
supper was much delayed.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's crazy. Okay, so the pen. What about? The plow would have been. Is that 1850, 1840 something?
I think the plow
30s was 1830s.
When did? Yeah, I think you're right. I think John Deere's plow came out
1830s.
like 1837 or something.
I mean, that's a little bit before the journals you're probably regularly reading because you're reading the Iowan ones, but.
Yeah, some of them are the settling of Marion County. Sarah Nolan. No, it wasn't Sarah Nolan. Sarah.
That's the book you
recommended. Sarah Nozeman wrote about living in Iowa while it was a territory before it became a state. Oh my gosh.
Okay, during that era, I've wondered this. So I used to live in the Davenport area, and there's a spot over by Westlake, which is just kind of, it's still a Davenport address, but it's kind of like a little district of Davenport, I guess you could say, mostly rural. And as you're heading down Highway 61 towards Muscatine, there's this old barn there, and it said, it could just be the address, but I'm pretty sure it's the year. It says 1836. So that's an old barn. That's 10 years pre-statehood. Mm-hmm. And I wonder when I see that, when you read about the settlement of America back east of the Mississippi River, there was, on the frontier's edge, there was near constant traumatic interaction between whites and Native Americans. Mm-hmm. And I never get that feel when I read history about Iowa. Were those hostilities? So when Sarah Nozeman was writing in pre-state Iowa, granted, that's a lot further into Iowa than Muscatine is, or Davenport is.
Yeah, she was in Van Buren County.
Oh, that's still
and
pretty far east.
And then coming up to Marion, yeah.
Is there any document about that of you got to sleep with one eye open all the time and you're always stressed out?
By then, the Black Hawk Treaty and some of that stuff had pushed. There was the neutral land where nobody could settle. That was supposed to be a strip between the white settlers, and then keep pushing the natives west.
One of my least favorite things in the whole world is dealing with red tape, paperwork, and bureaucracy. And at the very top of those things, insurance. I used to have, big company insurance because I thought me doing all the stuff online or with a robot phone call would be cheaper. Boy, was I wrong. My wife and I switched to McKay Insurance for everything personal and business that we interact with. And not only do we save over $1,000 a year, yes, $1,000 a year, we get to interact with real people. No longer having to deal with those robot phone calls, the terrible online interface. What is with those 1980 online interfaces? Well, we personally work with McKay Insurance. I can personally stamp my approval on working with them. I've worked with 5 different people from there. Every single one of them was incredible. And they give you big customer efficiency and pricing, if not better, with a very small company feel. They really take care of you. Highly recommend McKayInsagency.com. That's McKay KAYINS agency.com. You won't regret it.
The biggest thing these settlers will talk about is small bands of Indians who had stayed, who, would disturb them, would show up at their house and want food or want blankets or want, something.
That was part of Native American culture where they'd kind of show up to another tribe and be like, hey, can you feed us for 2 days?
I think so. It was hospitality was, expected. The Nazman family has some beautiful beadwork that was given to them by a woman who they traded, but they have this beautiful piece of beadwork that they still have in their family that they will show.
Man, do you think we make anything today in our households that could possibly last 150 years? Like a thing. Think of like IKEA tables. No way.
No.
Yeah. Probably I'd give him a really nice deer antler I found.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That'd probably be
something that I did not make but will last forever. Yeah, it's an interesting part of the story though. So I know there's the terrible massacre that happened, and there's a couple different.
Wasn't that northwest
Iowa? Yeah. And there's stories of that. Of course, the Black Hawk War, which if you're listening to this and you haven't yet listened to our interview with Dr. Patrick Young, it'll look like Jung, but it's Young. From about a month ago or so, go back and listen to that. You'll hear the whole history on Black Hawk and the significance there. But it's just so interesting to me how that wasn't, wasn't talked about all the time.
No, and I even think that with the settling of Pella. I mean, when Pella was settled in 1846, the last of the Meskwaki had just been pushed out 3 years before.
Oh, really?
1843, 42, the Red Rock Line pushed out, sent to Kansas. And they never make a remark about, this land was somebody else's at one time. Mm-hmm. Which is why I think land acknowledgement statements, you're starting to see them more because people are starting to realize that we just came in and kind of took this.
Yeah.
Do you think it was, that was for... the settlers all the way across, but specifically Pella, they didn't come from the East Coast. They came straight from the Netherlands, and their land in Europe, they were kind of for 1,000 years had been, you occupy this, and now we get a big enough army, so we occupy you, and it was just like that was the rule of the game. And do you think it had anything to do with that, or do you think it was just like more they felt it was providence?
Yeah, I think so. I think that whole manifest destiny thing where we are meant to take this over.
It was an incredible marketing campaign.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
And land, the lure of land, cheap land for so many Europeans was a huge draw when you're landlocked and you have a large family. So yeah, I mean, they wanted that land, and that's... Yeah, that's why everybody kept pushing farther west.
Interesting. If someone asked me what is the most American thing you could possibly think of, well, besides eating a hot dog, like a terrible hot dog at a baseball game, close. There are a few things that are really close, but one of them up there is moving to a place for some form of freedom, whether it's economic or religious or just less regulation or whatever. Moving to a place to have more opportunity, I think is way up there, and Iowa is basically defined by that.
Yeah. Look at all of our immigrant communities.
Used to be our state slogan, Fields of Opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Iowa has a huge, really larger than many other states, all of the immigrant communities, Norwegians, Swedes, Czech and Slovak, the Luxembourgers over at St. Donatus, you got the Dutch, and now you've got, the Amish coming in from Switzerland. It's just amazing how many little dots of ethnic heritage you have around the state of Iowa. Yeah.
Interesting. So our slogan, the education state, I wondered that, and I didn't even put two and two together to want to ask you, how did we get that slogan? Where did that come from?
Well, Iowa was a very early innovator in pushing public schools. The first little public school in Iowa was in Burlington. I think it's still standing, if I'm correct. We've always had a strong tradition of schooling, and then for many years, our students had the highest ACT scores and highest Iowa basic skills came from Iowa. It was just always something that was
Where did that come from?
I don't know.
Why didn't Illinois have it as much as Iowa if settlers came to Illinois for the same reason they came to Iowa?
I don't know. That's a good question. I have to get my education people over here. Because, I don't know.
I would be fascinated to figure out, why did we just decide? Because it's a big deal. I mean, Thomas Jefferson was a huge proponent of the populace being well educated, and honestly, I've thought about it a bunch and just think educating the masses is the harder but better route to create change.
Yeah,
it's a bigger lift. It is more painful. It's easier to just control or force things through that I think is better for the masses, instead of letting them decide for themselves.
Right.
And but I think it's the better way forward. And it's education is different now than it was back then. But I am fascinated by why is this random state in the middle of the United States?
One reason might be, and I don't know, is that Iowa was settled very largely by settlers from the East Coast. A lot of Iowa settlers came from Vermont. They came from Kentucky. They came from the Carolinas. They came from Massachusetts. Pella had some from Quebec. Education on the East Coast was prized, especially in these Puritan and congregational areas. And those are the people coming to. It wasn't until our 20th governor in Iowa that we had an Iowa-born governor.
Huh.
Did you know that?
No.
They were all born out of state and came in.
Interesting.
And most of them from the East. Yeah.
Huh.
So.
Yeah, the East Coast definitely pushes the education.
Right. So I don't know if that
years.
has something to do with it or not.
Man, the last thing I really wanted to bring up was pre and post tractors. In terms of agricultural farm work, we live in a world post tractor. I don't know. There's basically hardly anybody alive that remembers a pre-tractor day. Amish people do it by I think they're allowed to use tractors.
My grandpa, as I talked about already, he's 89, and they still used horses quite a bit when he was a young kid.
Oh, okay.
But he does also know that when his parents moved to the farm in 1927, there was already a left behind tractor out in the field. I think it was a Moline tractor. Before Minneapolis Moline even merged. Moline Tractor Works, I think is what it was called. And it was, back then that was a problem. They didn't have sealed bearings and things like that. And you'd have something go out on your tractor. It was more expensive to fix it than to get a new one. And
or even to haul it back to the barn.
Right.
Yeah.
So, before pre-1927, somebody out there had already been using tractors, but there was this overlap time,
Have you been watching Tractor Wars on PBS?
Yes, I have. It's so enjoyable.
It's an interesting, show about the early tractors and, And, a lot of people did hate giving up their horses.
Really?
They felt the horses had names, they had personalities. They felt very connected and, they kept them mostly, put them to pasture, but
they kind of lost their purpose. And became another mouth to feed, and another vet bill, and
right.
Interesting. So what are the journals like? What was the conversation as tractors were taking over?
I don't read as many modern ones like that. There was always, I remember my husband talking about when his dad got his first tractor. And the excitement, the neighbors came to look at it. The kids were telling everybody at school, and it was just it was kind of like getting your first TV in the neighborhood, that kind of a thing. So there was a great excitement about it and what it could do, how much more you could get done in a day. You talk about leisure time, now you have more time to spend with your family or go to a ball game or do what you want to do. The tractor helped with that.
Yeah.
Although then, to make the tractor worthwhile, you had to have more land.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a self.
I mean, we've definitely seen that spiral, and I guess probably all technology on the farm led that way. But the tractor kind of opened the floodgates, because before that, the major innovation was the plow, and that happened 50 years before that, or 60 years before that. Well, I really want to know your perspective. Maybe you haven't thought about it, but we've had conversations where you understand how important land is to, like, people's blood, very connected. And you've read through the transitions of Iowa's culture and probably Midwest culture and agriculture as it changed with it, and the technology. I know this feels out of left field, but I think your brain, because it's studied history so much, is well suited to take a stab at what you think autonomous tractors and combines will do to our culture here in Iowa.
Okay, autonomous, you mean self-running?
No humans in it at all. And now, to be fair, the technology basically is there. I mean, it probably is there, but it's not as well rolled out. And farming's owned by people who are older, and the companies probably understand that it'll be when millennials and Gen Zers take over that this will actually roll out. But what do you think will happen to our culture in the Midwest?
Well, I think people thought when we got rid of horses that culture was going to disintegrate. And then when we went to great big tractors, culture was going to disintegrate. And then when farms got bigger and bigger, culture was going to disintegrate. And to a certain extent, it probably has. I think if it works and it works well, it's going to free people up to invent and do a lot more things in agriculture. They're going to have the time to put into solving other agricultural problems, which is what I hope happens. So, because I know farmers are sitting in a tractor and they're thinking about these things and thinking, if I had more time, I'd like to work on this or do this. And maybe that's the key to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because I had a classmate in high school, 12, 13 years ago. He was telling me he'd do his homework in the tractor because the tractor would just drive for him. And I remember thinking, why are you even in it then? Like, what is the point? Obviously, there's like
there's a difference between auto steer and
well, but like filling in obviously humans filled in that gap, but that gap's getting real small. What's needed for humans, and so I appreciate you. That was a very optimistic view of that. I appreciate it.
I mean, now culture. Yeah, I mean, I think we have lost. When I was growing up in the 70s, all small farms, we were all together. People talked about what a great neighborhood we're in. Neighborhoods did things with each other. Every farmer down the road, we all got together and did things. Well, now there's fewer of those small farmers. Big farmers, some of them don't even live here. They've hired it out or rented it out. That has changed our culture. And I think we can romanticize that and say, I wish it was, but it's not. And we have to be pragmatic and think, okay, then what are the positives of it? And how can we make that culture? I think 4-H is a great way to preserve that culture among country kids. Keep them in that. FFA is another one. So there are ways to do it, but it's not going to be the same as it was. Can't be.
Man, that was fascinating. Ken, you got anything else?
Contentment. When you read back through those journals, do you get an overall sense of contentment or discontentment from people that were living in Iowa in the early days of Iowa's state history?
I think they went through some very hard stuff. I remember Sarah Nosman writing about a time when their entire crop failed and they spent a whole winter eating corn out of the field that they had boiled that they could find that was left for a winter. But I think they always, even when they went through these horrible times, they were looking for the opportunities ahead. You know, I know this is a hard time, but things are going to get better. And I don't know if I see that optimism among people today who are going through those things, who can say, I know things are going to get better.
Did they seem glad to have come to Iowa?
Yes, I think for the most part, all of them were glad to be there. I think they all had a realization that they were making a part of history. I really sense that they realize that this is not yet a state, you know, or even in the early years of the state, that we are some of the first ones here. We're mapping and kind of platting what's happening here. And that's exciting to see too.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite journal entry of all time that you read from an early Iowan?
I think just one that's kind of fun, well, not interesting, funny and interesting, is how possessive people were of their land. The whole process was not very organized at the beginning. You went in and staked your claim at an office in Fairfield or wherever, and you might get back and somebody has taken your land, a claim jumper. So they started these claim jumper clubs all over the state in southeast Iowa, where maybe 10 local farmers would come together and say, okay, we're going to stand together and keep out anybody who tries to come in and jump one of our claims. And if somebody did, they'd get their guns together and they'd go over there and they'd scare this person off. And sometimes there were shootings, and there was it got pretty hairy. And they do talk about that in their journals, about how this claim jumper club, how important it was, and how they got rid of this one person who was trying to take over a claim. And I like reading those kinds of things because it reinforces that this was their piece. They wanted it, they had paid for it, and they were going to have it, and they were going to protect it. And I think that's a very Iowa trait.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Man, that is really fascinating. Well, Val, thanks so much.
Well,
for
thanks for coming.
on.
I could talk all day about this.
Yeah, this is great. Well, we got plenty more to hit in the years to come.
Yes, please come back.
And maybe when you retire again, you can just be run your own segment on our podcast.
we would
That'd
love
be
that.
Great.
That would be so great. You would do a great job.
If you get on history.iowa.gov and you go to our research section, you can see what we have for all these, all of our stuff. And you can request to come in and take a look at it and sit down and read it yourself.
Oh, amazing.
That would be awesome.
If you go over to the research library, it's a building next door. I don't even try not to go there because I'll spend days there. So you do, really.
Man.
Can you promote the cemetery tour that you have coming up?
Yes. Sunday, May 3 in Marion County, we're doing, in conjunction with America 250's birthday this year, we are opening up 4 cemeteries in Marion County that have War of 1812 veterans buried there. And we'll have a host at each cemetery who will tell you about that person. There are 26 veterans in Marion County. We're just hitting 4 of them.
That's crazy.
And it's free. It's open to the public from 1 to 4 p.m. on May 3. And there will be things in all of the local papers in Marion County about it.
We appreciate you, and everyone listening. These journals they're a big deal. Like where we come from is a big deal. And I think it helps give us a vision, not that we're going to go backwards, but there are pieces that we let fall along the way that didn't need to fall.
Right.
We just kind of let them leave, especially those pieces of our culture where people were connecting so intimately and so deeply. I think those could come back, but all those things, they don't happen just because we talk about it on a podcast. Just like with conservation, all this happens one mind at a time.